There are two weights every human being carries. One is the weight of years, the memories, the mistakes, the lessons, the time that cannot be reclaimed. The other is the silence of family ties, the unspoken words, the unresolved conflicts, and the distance that grows between hearts even when blood connects them. Time is a teacher that never asks for permission to enter our lives. It does not knock on the door or announce its presence. It simply moves quietly, steadily, often unnoticed, until we stop and realize how far along the path we already are. We often think we have control over time, that we can plan tomorrow, delay conversations, postpone dreams, or wait for the perfect moment to live. But the truth is, time does not wait for our readiness. It flows with or without us, and in its silent passing, it leaves behind traces that become the weight we carry. When we are young, days feel endless. A year seems like a mountain too far away to see the top of. We tell ourselves there will always be time later to say what we want to say, to do what we want to do, to repair what we want to repair. Yet, with each season, those mountains shrink into hills, then into steps, and suddenly we look back and realize that what once seemed distant has already passed. It is not the years that wound us most, but the missed opportunities within them. There is a difference between growing older and truly living. To live means to fill the years with presence, with moments of courage, with words that reach others. To simply grow older is to let the years pile up like books left unopened on a shelf. They are there, but their stories remain unread. Many of us carry a silent library of moments we never allowed ourselves to experience, affections unspoken, reconciliations never attempted, passions left unexplored. These untold stories become heavier than the years themselves. The weight of years is not visible on the surface. Wrinkles may show the passage of time on the skin, but the true marks of years are found in the heart. A heart heavy with regret beats differently than a heart that has spoken its truth. The unsent letter, the visit we never made, the apology withheld out of pride, all of these live inside us like stones in our pocket, dragging us down as we walk. We imagine we can put them aside, but time does not erase them. Instead, time makes them sharper, more defined, because as the years pass, the possibility to change them grows smaller. What makes time so precious is also what makes it so heavy. It cannot be repeated. Once a moment has passed, it is gone forever. We may relive it in memory, but memory cannot substitute presence. That is why the years feel heavy, because they remind us not only of what we have done, but of what we have left undone. The embrace we did not offer, the truths we did not share, the gratitude we never expressed, these are the shadows that follow us as we grow older. The weight of years invites us to reflect deeply. It asks us whether we are living fully or merely existing, whether we are using the gift of time to connect, to express, to create meaning, or whether we are drifting, waiting, postponing. In the end, time does not ask us what we dreamed of doing. It only shows us what we actually did with the chances we had. Silence is often misunderstood. Many believe silence is peace, that it prevents conflict, that it keeps relationships stable. Yet silence within a family can be louder than the fiercest argument. Words left unspoken do not disappear. They settle in the spaces between people, and over time they harden into walls that are difficult to break. It is not always anger that creates distance between family members. More often, it is the things never said, the apology that remains stuck in the throat, the gratitude that was never expressed, the affection that was kept hidden out of pride or fear. These absences grow into an invisible presence that everyone feels but no one names. A family can sit together at the same table, share meals, celebrate occasions, and still be surrounded by silence. Laughter may echo, but beneath it there can be unspoken pain. We convince ourselves that by staying silent, we are avoiding confrontation, but what we are truly doing is postponing connection. Silence delays healing, and in its delay, it creates wounds deeper than any harsh word could. Arguments, as painful as they may be, at least bring feelings to the surface. Silence buries them underground, where they grow unseen, shaping the roots of bitterness. The danger of silence is that it disguises itself as safety. It feels easier to say nothing than to risk rejection, to avoid speaking rather than to expose our vulnerability. But the cost of that avoidance is heavy. Children grow up without hearing the affirmation they longed for. Parents age without receiving the appreciation they deserved. Siblings drift apart because the bridge of communication was never maintained. Each missed word is like a brick added to a wall, and before long the wall is so high that neither side knows how to climb it. In the beginning, silence is only a pause. One day, we hold back from saying, "I'm proud of you." Another day, we stop ourselves from admitting, "I was wrong." Over time, these pauses accumulate, and the family begins to speak less and less about what truly matters. Conversations remain on the surface about weather, work, daily routines, but the heart remains untouched. The silence deepens and the connection weakens. It is not that we do not feel love. Most families love one another deeply, but love that is not expressed leaves behind confusion. People wonder if they are truly valued, if they are seen, if they are understood. The silence becomes a fog in which doubt grows, and when doubt grows, trust diminishes. Slowly, the bond of family shifts from warmth to obligation, from intimacy to formality. What silence hides most skillfully is regret. We believe we will have more time to speak later, to say the words we keep inside. But life has a way of reminding us that time is never guaranteed. When the moment to speak passes forever, the silence becomes unbearable. It is then we realize that silence, once thought to be harmless, was in fact the heaviest sound of all. Distance is not measured only by physical space. A person can live in the same house, sleep under the same roof, and eat at the same table, yet feel like a stranger. True distance is measured in the closeness of hearts, in the willingness to share feelings, and in the courage to open one's inner world to another. Families often confuse presence with connection. They think that because they are physically together, they are close. But closeness is not guaranteed by proximity. It is built through understanding, through listening, and through the consistent act of seeing each other as human beings, with fears, hopes, and longings. When distance grows inside a family, it rarely begins with a dramatic event. More often, it begins quietly. A child tries to share a thought, but is dismissed. A parent longs to connect, but does not know how to speak the language of affection. A sibling feels unseen or overshadowed. These small moments accumulate, and slowly people begin to withdraw, choosing silence over expression, choosing comfort in isolation over the vulnerability of reaching out. The physical body remains in the home, but the heart begins to wander elsewhere. The painful truth about emotional distance is that it is invisible. Outsiders may look at a family and think it is whole and strong. They see gatherings, rituals, and smiles, but within there can be oceans of separation. A father and son may not have spoken deeply for decades. A mother and daughter may share everything about daily life, yet never dare to speak about the things that ache in their hearts. This invisible distance becomes heavier with time because it teaches us to pretend, to perform closeness instead of living it. Distance also feeds itself through pride and ego. When one person feels hurt and retreats, the other often does the same. Instead of moving closer, both step back, each waiting for the other to take the first step. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and suddenly a lifetime has passed with neither side willing to break the cycle. What began as a small gap has widened into a canyon, and crossing it feels impossible. We often tell ourselves that distance is safer, that it protects us from conflict or disappointment. But safety built on avoidance is not safety at all. It is loneliness disguised as protection. Families are meant to be places where hearts rest, but when distance settles in, home becomes a place where people live side by side as strangers. The house is filled with voices, yet no one feels heard. It is filled with presence, yet no one feels truly seen. The tragedy of emotional distance is that it can last a lifetime without being named. A child can grow old without ever hearing the gentle words they craved. A parent can pass away without knowing that their love was returned. Siblings can carry resentment into old age, never recognizing that beneath the layers of silence and pride, there was always a longing for closeness. Distance is not about miles. It is about hearts that no longer reach for one another, and the longer it continues, the heavier it becomes to bridge. As the years advance, the body begins to show its natural decline. Joints stiffen, bones weaken, movements slow down, and the once flexible frame becomes harder to bend. Yet what many do not see is that the heart and spirit can also become rigid when wounds remain unhealed. The experiences we carry, especially those rooted in family pain, are not left behind as we grow older. Instead, they travel with us, shaping the way we see ourselves, the way we trust, and the way we allow others to come close. These unhealed wounds do not simply vanish with time. They deepen, carving lines into the soul, much like the years carve lines into the face. A person who has carried rejection from childhood often grows into an adult who doubts their worth. A child who grew up in an environment where affection was withheld may become an adult who struggles to give love freely. And as age progresses, these patterns become more difficult to undo. The body is not the only thing that stiffens with age. The heart also becomes less willing to bend, less able to release what it has held onto for so long. Pain that was never addressed, words that were never spoken, forgiveness that was never offered, these remain lodged inside, heavy and unmoving. Unhealed wounds manifest in many ways. Some show up as bitterness, a constant dissatisfaction with life, a sharpness in words and attitudes that pushes others away. Some appear as withdrawal, where the individual chooses to isolate, preferring the company of their own memories, however painful, rather than risk being hurt again. Others may express it as control, seeking to dominate situations or people as a way to protect themselves from feeling powerless, as they once did when the wounds were created. All of these responses reveal the same truth. The past is still alive inside, and age has not lessened its grip. The tragedy is that as time passes, the opportunity for healing often feels smaller. A young person may still believe in change, in reconciliation, in new beginnings, but an older person who has carried wounds for decades can feel that change is no longer possible, that it is too late to speak, too late to forgive, too late to receive the love they once longed for. This belief creates a heaviness greater than the physical aches of age. It is a weight that bends the spirit, making each day feel burdened by yesterday. Carrying unhealed wounds into old age also impacts relationships across generations. A parent who never addressed their own pain may unconsciously pass it down to their children, who in turn pass it further. Harshness, silence, or distance become family traditions, inherited not by choice, but by repetition. What begins as one person's wound can ripple outward, shaping the emotional landscape of an entire family tree. And unless someone chooses to confront the wound, to face it and bring light into it, the weight continues to travel heavier with each generation. This is why the unhealed wounds of family are among the heaviest burdens in life. They live in our stories, in the way we love, in the way we respond to others. Age may bring wisdom, but if the heart remains bound to old pain, wisdom is clouded by bitterness, and so the later years, which could be filled with freedom, gratitude, and peace, become overshadowed by the long shadow of yesterday's hurts. Reconciliation is often spoken of as if it is simple, but in truth, it is one of the most courageous acts a human being can attempt. It is not just about saying sorry or I forgive you. It is about stepping into a space of vulnerability where the heart must be willing to put aside its armor and reveal its softness once again. For many, this feels like weakness, to reach out to someone who has hurt us or to admit that we have caused pain seems like surrender. Yet it is in this very surrender that strength is found, because reconciliation demands honesty, humility, and a willingness to risk rejection in order to create healing. It is far easier to remain in silence, to maintain distance, to let pride dictate the terms of a relationship. Pride whispers that we should not be the first to act, that the other person must take responsibility before we do. But while pride waits, years are lost, days turn into decades, and the distance grows wider until the silence becomes unbearable. Reconciliation, on the other hand, interrupts this pattern. It says, I will not let my fear or my pride decide the fate of this bond. It is the choice to value connection over ego, peace over stubbornness, and love over the illusion of victory. The path of reconciliation is not free from pain. It often stirs up old wounds, reopening what was buried. Memories resurface, words are recalled, and emotions that were long suppressed rise to the surface. Many avoid this path because they fear the discomfort of reliving what hurt them. But what they forget is that wounds do not disappear when ignored. They simply remain hidden but alive, shaping behaviors and emotions in silence. Reconciliation brings these wounds into the open, allowing them to be acknowledged, faced, and eventually released. This is why it requires courage. It is not just an act of reaching out to another, but also an act of confronting ourselves. There is also the risk of rejection. When we extend a hand, we cannot control whether it will be taken. The other may refuse, may still be locked in their own pain, may not be ready to meet us halfway. Yet even in this, reconciliation holds power, because the act itself transforms the one who dares to attempt it, to speak honestly, to express regret, to offer forgiveness. These actions free the heart, regardless of the response. They break the chains of silence within ourselves, and they teach us that peace begins not with others, but within. The beauty of reconciliation is that when it succeeds, it does not simply restore what was lost, it creates something deeper. Relationships that have walked through pain and found healing often emerge stronger than before because they are built on truth, vulnerability, and forgiveness. They carry a new resilience, a new understanding of each other's humanity. And even when reconciliation does not fully mend what was broken, the attempt itself plants seeds. Sometimes years later, those seeds grow and healing finally takes root where once there was only silence. Reconciliation is not the easy road, it is the brave one. It calls us to step into discomfort, to risk rejection, to lay down pride. But in answering that call, we give ourselves and our families the chance to break cycles of pain and to create a space where love has the final word. When people think of inheritance, the mind often turns to material possessions, houses, land, savings, jewelry, the physical things that can be counted and passed down. But these are not the true treasures a family leaves behind. Material wealth can be lost, divided, spent, or forgotten. What endures across generations is not what is written on paper or stored in banks, but what is carried in the heart. The true inheritance we leave behind is the memory of how we lived, the way we treated others, and the atmosphere of love or silence that defined our family bonds. Children rarely remember the value of gifts more than the value of time. They do not hold on to the memory of money given, but they carry for life the memory of whether they felt seen, heard, and cherished, the tone of our voice when we spoke to them, the presence we offered when they needed us, the patience we showed in their mistakes. These remain engraved far more deeply than any possession. And when they grow older, they pass down not only what they have received in terms of material comfort, but the emotional patterns they have absorbed. A heart raised in love tends to give love. A heart raised in silence often struggles to break free from it. The inheritance of love is not always grand or dramatic. It is found in small gestures repeated over time, the way a parent greets their child in the morning, the way forgiveness is offered after conflict, the way gratitude is expressed for even the simplest efforts. These acts, though small, weave together the unseen fabric of belonging. Over time, this fabric becomes the most precious gift, one that children carry with them into their own families, one that sustains them even when parents are no longer alive. But the opposite is also true. Silence, distance, and unresolved pain are also inherited. If we fail to speak the words of love, if we allow pride to prevent reconciliation, if we live surrounded by conflict or avoidance, that becomes the legacy we pass on. They learn not only from what we say, but from what we refuse to say. They absorb the patterns of silence, the weight of unspoken emotions, and they often repeat them unknowingly. In this way, the silence of one generation can echo through many that follow. What makes this inheritance so powerful is that it is not confined by death. Even after we are gone, our presence continues to live in the hearts of those who knew us. Every word spoken, every silence held, every act of kindness or neglect becomes part of the memory that shapes others. This is why the responsibility is so great. To live with love is not only to free ourselves, but to lighten the burden for those who come after us. To live with silence or bitterness is not only to carry our own pain, but to hand it down to others who did not choose it. The true inheritance is not counted in numbers, but in moments. It is the warmth of a hug, the depth of an apology, the courage of reconciliation, and the quiet but steady presence of care. These are the treasures no one can steal, the wealth that cannot be divided, the legacy that does not fade. And it is within our power every single day to decide what inheritance we will leave behind, one of silence and regret, or one of love and connection. The weight of years and the silence of family ties remind us that life is fragile, that time is precious, and that relationships are not guaranteed to last without care. We cannot control the passing of years, but we can decide how we live within them. We cannot erase the silence that has already been carried, but we can choose here and now to break it with words of honesty, forgiveness, and love. What we leave behind is not only our stories, but the echoes of how we treated one another, Our children and their children will carry the inheritance of our choices, whether it is the heaviness of unspoken pain or the lightness of a bond that was nurtured and healed. The question then is not whether time will pass, for it always does. The question is how we will fill that time and what traces of love or silence we will leave behind when our years come to an end. Every day is an invitation to speak where there has been silence, to forgive where there has been hurt, to reach across distance, and to remember that the truest wealth we offer is the warmth of our presence. The weight of years cannot be avoided, but the silence of family ties can be broken. And when we choose connection over distance, courage over pride, love over silence, we create a legacy that will outlive us, one that time itself cannot take away.